150 million of those are under 30. Of that 150 million, 110 million are under 18. Okay? There's 90 million people between the ages of 55 and 90. So that leaves 70 million people between the ages of 31 and 54. So if you look at the Medicare, Social Security, and costs of paying for the benefit programs for the 55 to 90, and you look at who's paying for the current costs of raising and educating and covering the expenses of getting people through college today, it's all the people between the ages of 31 and 54. They're the group that is getting hit with from both ends. Now, to jump real quickly to the rest of the world, if you go to the Middle East, which is about 1.2 billion people, demographics are a little bit different, but shows an extremely young population. There, about 60% of the population is under 30, and about half of that is under 14. Very, very young population. Population demographics. You need 2.21 births per thousand in order to maintain a population. The United States is at 2.1. That's as of today. Italy is at 1. Europe is at, EU is at 1.8. EU is Spain, France, Germany. England's not in the EU yet. All the other countries that are, it's about 1.8. Italy and France are at 0.8. 0.8. In 20 years, if Italy doesn't change what it's doing, there will be no more Italians in Italy. Seriously. Okay? The Middle East, Arab countries, Indonesia, India, Ukraine, their birth rates are at 3.85 per thousand. So if you take this demographics out 20 to 40 years and nothing changes, you see what's occurring. You see the shift that's happening. So let's jump into healthcare. And the reason why I wanted to do demographics is because if you talk through, and I talk about the evolution of healthcare, and I'm going to go back to 1950s, you'll be able to take these numbers and play them in your head as you see what's occurring and why what happened has happened. And I think, as our first speaker indicated, and Joe and I try not to take we believe one thing or the other. We try to present the facts. Obviously, we have biases in certain things. But in some people's minds today, the current system is either an evolution or it's a revolution. And this last statement is critical. For those of you who are in the healthcare industry, or people know the people in the industry, or have talked to people in it, the healthcare industry is somewhat interesting in that most people learn a particular part of what they do, and that's all they learn. And so within the industry in general, and that's a loose term, there's probably less than 10% of the people who work in it. And remember that 1 in 10 people in the United States work directly or indirectly for healthcare. Less than 10% of that knows how it operates, knows how it works. And when it comes to politicians, less than about 2% of them know how it works. I had I'm in District 8, which is John Boehner's district, and when the healthcare legislation was going through Congress, I kept pleading with him to get me a copy so that I could look at it and work with his people on trying to understand what was coming and how to debate it. And he said, well, we've looked at the summary. The summary? Yeah, that cover sheet. I said, so you've looked at the cover sheet? By the way, I do have a summary of the legislation, by the way, and it's 17 pages long. But he said, you know what, it's not going to pass anyway. That's what he told me. And I remind him that every time we talk. Okay, so a system or an industry that knows standards and a similar focus of services. Currently, healthcare is an amalgamation of for-profit and non-profit businesses units, all providing services based upon very few nationally adopted standards of care. There are protocols, but they don't necessarily use those protocols. And so we're going to see this evening why that, as well as the manner in which healthcare has evolved, has created some of the mess we're in today. One of the challenges is that every state has a Department of Insurance. Every Department of Insurance has its own way of interpreting rules and own way of determining what the law should be for that particular state. Some states are much more lenient than others. Maryland has some very egregious rules, whereas Texas and other states don't. So depending upon the states that you're in, certain insurance carriers will end up going there because it's easier for them to do business. And obviously there are a lot of laws for Medicare and Medicaid. Each practice has a set of evidence-based protocols. And each state has its own administrative interpretation impacting those protocols. And the federal government likewise has its own set of interpretation impacting those protocols. And all of these are impacted by the personal injury cases and law firms. All right? There's different codes for different services that are rendered, and right now they use what they call the ICD-9 codes. There's 12,450. The ICD-10 coding, which is coming out, is going to be international coding. And it was going to come out this year, but they pushed it back. But the last I read, it has 157,000 codes and up to another 250,000 modifiers. Which means that it will be virtually impossible for a human being to do this, all right? Remember, it's international. All the things that are being developed now are being international. They're going to shift from bar coding to the new international coding, so you're going to see things moving on an international basis. The healthcare industry has never had a recession. Never. What three other industries have never had a recession? Worldwide. Anybody?
Government. Education.
Yeah. Well, the government can't have a recession because it doesn't ever have to make money. Beer? Well, it's close. Drugs? They've never had a recession. Makeup. I'll give you the three. Sex, drugs, and weapons. Have never had a recession. I just got the report, and just to diverge, talk about where money's spent. In 2010, the largest exported item in dollar and cents value from the United States, England, Germany, France, Israel, Russia, and China was what? Weapons. Weapons. And you wonder why we have so many wars. You saw those people in Egypt in the street, right? They're sitting on those tanks. Those were what tanks? Abrams tanks, right. Okay. Okay, concepts and types of insurance. Life, auto, homeowners, long-term care, health insurance. All insurance considers some assumption of risk, some shifting of risk, some pooling of resources, and sharing of risk. Now, with life insurance, the reality is, how often do you get to use it? Once, right? That's it. And after that, you don't care. All right? Auto insurance. Do you buy your auto insurance going, I can't wait to have an accident so I can see how they fix my car? No, you hope that they don't. But if you have a number of accidents trying that out, your rates will go up. So it's an occurrence that you hope doesn't happen. All right? Homeowners insurance. Likewise, you hope you never have to use it. Long-term care. Once again, you hope you never have to use it, but if you have it, you've got it. There's about 1.5 million policies sold nationwide in long-term care. Health insurance, however, you use. So it really is a prepaid benefit that you're going to use. So because you're going to use it, because utilization characteristics are easy to get, insurance companies know how often you can use it, by what age, what characteristics you have, what conditions you have, and they can then rate you accordingly. Okay. Let me, so I stay within my time frame, I'm going to just quickly read through some of these. The importance of this is it gives you a perspective. What I try to do is give people perspective and context so that you understand what you're dealing with. Health and care insurance and benefits programs began about 55 years ago, shortly after World War II. People came back from the war. There was a huge run-up to building products, goods, and services, huge demand, and there was competition for people. So they created these things called insurance in order to attract people to different employers. But at that time, the majority of service